Hey, this is Darren from Property Prosperity, and today I thought I'd have a chat to you about a conversation I had today, actually, with someone that gave me a call. They've got a property, they're looking at selling it. To be honest, they don't really want to put it on the market. They don't want to go through the process of having real estate agents and having open inspections and the whole thing associated with selling a house. It can be a bit of a hassle, to be honest. So they came to me saying, "Hey, you're a property developer. Do you want to buy our property off us, and you can go off and do whatever you want with it? We just want you to give us a fair price." And so I then took them through the process, and I suppose the logic or the thinking of what a property developer would be doing if they were looking at their property. And essentially, the first thing they're going to do is look at their property and just see, would it be profitable as a development? And so, because the reason why that's important for you when you're selling your property, even if you don't care, I don't care, if it's going to be profitable, and I just want to sell it to you, the developer. The thing to understand, the developer's not going to buy it off you unless they think it's going to be profitable, because that's why they do it. They do it to make money. So that's the first thing to think about is it going to be profitable? And so there's no point just going out there talking to random property developers saying, "Hey, buy my site." You should do some work up front, because at the end of the day, hey, Isaac, thanks for joining. And Dave, I saw you join there too. So thanks for joining. So yeah, so the first thing is it going to be profitable? So the reason we would put in the effort of deciding whether it's profitable before we, go out having chat to property developers is essentially property developers are lazy. They're out there looking for the easiest way to make the most amount of money. And so by you putting in a bit of research up front, then you're making it easier for them. And the easier it is for them, the more likely they are to pay a fair price. Developers, like anybody, they don't want to take on any risk, and they want to make lots of money. So the more information you can provide to them, the less risk that is there for the developer, then the more they're likely to pay for it, essentially. And then if we look at the project, we look at it in a few different ways. Is it going to be worth subdividing firstly? But then what are you going to result in? Is it going to be, you're going to sell it as blocks of land, or are you going to sell it as a house and land package, or is it going to be, off the plan, or is it going to be, finished off houses? What are we actually going to do with it? And what's it going to be worth either, through either scenario? And so also what we need to think about is what's it going to be worth right now, because then we can have a look at what it'll be worth at the end, and then we can start to take into account some of the issues in the middle. What's the cost of subdividing, the demolition cost? Is there any trees or easements or retaining walls or fencing? All those different things involved in doing a lot of people just assume with a subdivision it's just about lodging an application and subdividing the block, but all those other things, at the end of the day, no one wants to buy a block of land. They want a house, and all those other things are going to matter. So if there's trees or there's easements or the retaining walls and all that sort of stuff, well, hey, Danny, thanks for joining. All those things that are going to have to be fixed before you go out and sell the property, essentially. Because the thing to understand is people don't want to buy a block of land; they want a house. And so what you're trying to do, and this is the way successful developers think. They don't think about subdividing land. They think about how do we allow people to be able to build the house they want on there, and is that house going to suit the market? So a lot of my time is not really focused on what the subdivision potential is. It's focused on what sort of houses I can fit on. In the world of council and approvals, it's called planning approval. So they have subdivision approval, which is subdividing the land from, say, 1 into 2. And then they have planning approval, which is where the house is going to fit on the block. And they have something called building approval, which is the structure of the house and all the nuts and bolts and all that sort of stuff, making sure it fits within the building code. So that's the thing to understand. It's not about subdividing the land. It's about what sort of house is going to be on there at the end. And then is the market willing to buy that sort of house? And then you go back and say, okay, well, if that's the sort of house I can fit on there, it might be a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom or whatever it is, what's it going to be worth? How much is it going to cost to build that sort of house? And then what you do is add the price of the land to what it's going to cost to build the house, and you compare that to a finished off house. Because if, for a not finished off house, essentially, if that's more expensive than a finished off house, then you're not going to sell your lands, because no one's going to buy a block of land and build a house when it's going to be more expensive than just buying a built one down the road. At the end of the day, it's going to be a lot easier than, buying a built one than going through the hassle of buying a block of land and building a house. So that's why it's really important to do your research up front. Make sure you got all this, really clear up front. So when you're going out and talking to property developers, you understand their logic. And if there's no money in it for a property developer, they're not going to buy it off you at the end of the day. So, because the thing is, and this is what a lot of people don't understand either, if you can't see how it's going to be profitable to do a development, then why would a developer buy it off you? Obviously, they're doing it to make money. But on top of that, they've got a lot of other costs which you don't have. So if they're buying the property off you, they're going to pay stamp duty when they buy the property, whereas you already own the property, so you don't have to pay stamp duty. They're going to be paying what I call holding costs, or they're going to be paying interest on the property once they've bought it, whereas essentially you don't have to worry about that because you're maybe living there or renting out the property as well. Once a developer buys your property, they forked out money in stamp duty. They've got this interest bill, continually racking up. So it's costing them money just to hang on to the property. So already, they're behind the eight ball. They're already in a worse position than you are with the property you already own. And so it's going to be far more profitable for you to develop the site than it would be for a developer to develop the site. So then the question becomes, well, if I'm going to sell this off to a developer and I know that it's going to be less profitable for them than it would be for me, then why would I sell it to a developer? At the end of the day, it's, why not get the money in my pocket? And so that's when it comes down to trying to work out, how do we go about doing this whole process of being a property developer? And, because I've never done it before and it's all really risky and, they know more than what I do. How do I? So this particular client that came to me, I said, hey, I tell you what we're going to do is before you spend any money, we're going to find out if someone wants to buy your block of land or your subdivided block. So we'll leave the house as is. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to put, your subdivided blocks on the market. We're going to let people know when they're buying a subdivided blocks that they haven't been subdivided yet. But we've already done the research up front to make sure they can be subdivided. And we've found out what can fit on the blocks, what sort of houses can fit on the blocks. We know how much it's going to cost to build that sort of house. So we can give them a pretty good idea of what the finished off house is going to cost. And we can almost, if we do a little bit more research, we can give them an exact price of what the finished house is going to cost. And so then they can compare that to a finished off house down the road. If we're cheaper than a finished off house down the road, then, why wouldn't they buy it rather than buying the finished off house? And so they have potential to, make 30, 40, 50 grand cheaper than what the built house is down the road. So, they get what they want and they get to save some money on the price as well. So by the time the house is built, they've actually made some money. So the only downside with this, as far as the purchase is concerned, they'll have to wait for their block of land to become available because we've got it on the market and we haven't actually subdivided it yet. And so generally it would take 6 to 9 months for the subdivision to go through. So the people buying have to understand they have to wait 6 to 9 months before they get their block of land. But to be honest, for most people, that's not really a big deal because most times when you buy a block of land, you're going to have to go off and find your builder and you have to draw up some plans and get your council approvals and all the engineering and do all your selections. That can take 3 to 6 months for that process to happen anyway. So really what's happening is you're locking in that block of land knowing it's yours. You can get all the approvals and all the selections and all the engineering, all that sort of stuff done. And then you only settle on the land. Basically, the longer the settlement, the better for you. So if it is a 9-month settlement, you've got all your approvals done and, 6 months later, you've got it all done and you're sitting there waiting for the land to settle. That's not a bad thing. It's not costing you any money. You're not paying any interest on the land. And so all you have to do is just sit around and wait for it to ready. And as soon as you settle on the land, then the builder can start building straight away. That's the shortest possible time between acquiring the land and the house being built, which means you're paying the least amount of money as far as interest goes. So it works out really good for the buyer. As far as the owner goes, you can see the benefits now is, I've then put my blocks of land on the market before I've even done my subdivision. And then I can find out whether people are interested or not. If no one buys it and if no one's interested, then I know, well, maybe there's not any potential to subdivide because no one wants to buy it. And it means I'm not taking the risk of knocking my house down and subdividing and all the costs associated with that, putting it on the market and then finding we can't sell our blocks of land and then we're stuck. Because, when you think about it, what are you going to be able to do with a block of land? Nothing really. And so if you can't sell it, your only option's to either take it off the market or drop the price. Whereas at least with a house, if you can't sell it, then at least you can rent it out and you can do something with it in the meantime. So that's basically the advice I gave my client, and hopefully it makes sense to you and you see why, by that pure strategy there, how you can eliminate risk from a development because you've gone out and find someone that's going to buy your developed property before you've actually done the development. And so you're locked in that purchaser. They've told you exactly how much they're going to buy it off you for, and then you've locked in the profits before you've had to spend any money up front. And so, you can see how that's a massive game changer as far as developers go. And that is the strategy that successful developers take when they go out doing properties and subdivisions, because you're eliminating all the risk and you're opening, you know exactly how much profit you're going to make before you've even spent a cent. So hopefully that's made sense. If you like what I had to say, then click on the like button because I really appreciate it. If you don't like it, then still click on the like button because I really appreciate that too. And if you've had an experience where you've done a development where maybe you've ignored my advice and you've gone and done the whole subdivision, you got to the end and maybe it hadn't worked out how you'd like to, or maybe you'd had taken my advice and you'd bought had the property and you put it on the market first and sold the land off before you'd actually done the subdivision, and gave you the confidence knowing that you got to the end of the development without any chance of you losing money along the way. So I'd love to hear about it. And if you've got something you'd like me to talk about in a future episode, happy to have a chat about that too. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you tuning in, and I look forward to catching up with you next time. Bye for now.